It's about inclusivity. It's about making sure that we're all heard and we're all embraced and we exist. We're all different.
Earlier this year, I turned 40, and I wanted to do something meaningful alongside all of the celebrating. I decided to ask my community to support me in helping an underprivileged community and give them a small yet transformative boost. This is how the Rainbow Boosters project was born. In sharing the idea with people, I realised that we all know of a teacher, a family member, a friend, an author or a singer that has made a profound impact on our life. I wanted to create a space where we can share those stories. So welcome to the Rays of Sunshine series. In this episode, I speak to Samir Bhamra. He is an award-winning artistic director of Phizzical, a company that commissions and produces South Asian arts and cultural experiences. He is the artistic producer of the UK Asian Film Festival and a mentor to emerging artists. Sam is also a very close friend. I've been fortunate to work with him on many theatre and dance productions over the world for the best part of 20 years. I've seen how he's been a ray of sunshine for so many people pursuing their dreams in performing arts. He is one of my life's guardian angels, and I'm really glad he managed to squeeze some time in for this series. I hope you enjoy our conversation. Hi, Sam. Thanks for joining the Rays of Sunshine series. I know that you are flat out in the middle of the UK Asian Film Festival, which is celebrating its 25th year. So thank you for squeezing some time. And I know you're about to check out in a hotel somewhere in London. So I appreciate you just jumping on your iPad and talking to us. How are you, firstly? How's it all going?
It's going really well. I'm touch wood. Every year it's been a struggle to make the festival happen. And every year the festival just happens and it has a life of its own and people come and people celebrate with us. And I think that is just the magic of what we do and why we do it and who we do it for, because nothing else like this exists out there for them.
Yeah, and you've been producing it or working on it for 20 years of those 25 now, is that right?
Yeah, I started as a dancer, so I was performing at a different festival, and I picked up their brochure, and I was like, "Oh, they've got an event at BAFTA. We need to perform at BAFTA." And at that time, we were doing the Devdas dance set that we used to do. That the film hadn't even come out yet. The film was coming out 2 months later, and so we were doing our own self choreography. And I was like, "We need to perform it at BAFTA." And I phoned them and said, "Could you just have to create a 15-minute slot for us?" And they said, "Okay." And then the rest was history. The following year, I joined as a volunteer, and then I've just been doing it every year.
Can you tell us, who is your ray of sunshine? Who was the person or the teacher that's had the biggest impact on your life, and how did they shape your future?
When we're talking about teachers, one of the very early teachers is a lady called Betty Willoughby. Betty was my German school teacher. When I moved to the UK in 1989, I lived in a town called Nelson. Mrs. Willoughby invited me to come and watch Phantom of the Opera at the Manchester Piccadilly. And that was the first time I saw a full-blown theatre production. And what a sound, what an experience. The theatrics of it had me completely bedazzled. And as a young man, I sort of knew at that point, this is what I wanted to do.
Okay.
I actually owe a lot of gratitude to Betty, who doesn't know this. She'll find out actually later this week, because I'm going to be seeing her for a very long time.
Amazing. So you have lots of influences being in the arts, because you need to be inspired by stuff or see stuff or uninspired by things. Is there books or films? I know you have a massive love for Hindi cinema, but is there a book or a film that you think has transformed or inspired you in your journey towards what you're doing now?
It's really tricky, because I live in this world which is both Eastern and Western. And when I think about the two, actually both those areas influence what I do. Yeah. And I always say, actually, Indian mythology, Hindu mythology, and Shakespeare's texts actually influence a significant amount of what I think life is about, and what these texts actually teach us about. Shakespeare, in his Western head, goes deep into human psychology. The same when you look at the Ramayana or the Mahabharata, they actually talk about people and their lives and the impact of decisions that are taken. And they talk about gods and power and um, vulnerability within that, you know. And I think that that's the bit that I love the most. I think that's what inspires me. Um, it's human stories at the end of the day, because that's the industry that I'm in.
Yeah.
Is we try and make you feel something. We try and make you connect to something. And I always say I like to do two things. I like to make people happy with the shows that I make, but I also want to tell tomorrow's stories today. And I can only do that if I look at our history and actually both the mythological texts as well as Shakespeare's folio both actually tell us about the past, but also the present, and they constantly remain so relevant.
Yeah. Yeah, I know that was an unfair question. I know you've probably watched thousands and thousands of films, and it's like asking a painter to choose their favorite color when essentially you need all of them to do what you do. So yeah. Just on that though, you talked about the two different angles of the storytelling that you do. A lot of people just go out there to make films that make people happy, or just please them in the entertainment side. You've spent a lifetime trying to push the boundaries or fight for the underdog or raise an issue that no one's talking about and put it out there for everyone to feel uncomfortable about on stage. Like, where is that just drive to tell those stories come from?
I think it's actually, I go back to my previous answer. It's actually rooted in those very texts, characters. And if I look at it from not from a religious perspective, for example, but the characters in the Mahabharata, for example, all have different motivations, and those motivations drive people to do things that are really uncomfortable when you think about them. But these texts also teach us to be charitable, and they teach us to be giving, and the fact that they're written in that way, you know, you can't always just have happiness. Otherwise, the happiness scale is always going to go up. You're not going to appreciate it. And it's nice to have those uncomfortable moments to then also discover something about yourself.
Right.
I, for example, I struggle watching horror films. They make me really uncomfortable. My blood pressure goes really high. But sometimes I watch those high-hitting suspense musical moments in series and stuff, just because I'm like, okay, I need to watch this bad bit so that I can actually appreciate all the other good bits. Yeah, I think that's the reason why I do it. Is it's about inclusivity. It's about making sure that we're all heard and we're all embraced and we exist. We're all different. And in today's world, the magnitude of the differences has really increased with how people want to identify with each other, the courage it takes to actually say, I now identify as this. Other people not willing to accept those identity modes or pronouns, for example. All of those things, I think, just make mankind so much more interesting. It's in those uncomfortable spaces where if you stop for a second and put yourself out of it and you question yourself, that's when you discover something amazing. There's a perfect example in the Krishna and Arjun conversation on the chariot. Should he fight or should he not? Should he kill? Should he fight his family, essentially? And this whole thing about right and wrong and that conscious conversation, that's what these uncomfortable moments really do. It's actually rooted again back to those texts.
I'm gonna ask you a more of a creative question. You're talking about the speed of change and identity and the issues in the world. As a writer, how do you stay relevant and keep up to date with all of the different routes or the colors of the rainbow? Before it was quite arguably a little bit easier because there were really deep lines that you could go after. But how do you stay relevant in such a changing world at speed?
I mean, I think the prime example for that really is I recently wrote a BBC Three short film. BBC Three is aimed at the 16 plus age group. Um, I'm far removed from that age group by several decades. Um, but I wholeheartedly embrace that journey to learn from um, how the team at the BBC wanted this piece to be written, what sort of language that I might potentially use. It made me think about those things that I don't normally think about when I'm writing a Bollywood show, because that is so deeply ingrained into me.
Yeah.
So here I was putting myself in a really uncomfortable situation, writing in a rhythm and a meter that is alien to me, writing in vocabulary that I really struggle with. But the joy of working in the industry that I do is that there's always new young people that we are bringing into the sector, and we're going out to listen to these people and hear their perspectives and their stories. And that really is pretty enriching, because I can, I wouldn't say appropriate, but I can apply those moments in their life with my own experiences then as a child, as a young person. When I was 16, I can think back and look back in that time period and think, actually, yes, I felt all of those things. I've just forgotten about them.
Mhm.
And having those conversations with people of all genders and all ages is really vital to who we are.
Yeah.
You know, I love, for example, having conversations with your mum. Um, she is an incredible force, so learned, and has such a wide perspective on life and stories. And having that conversation with her is just incredible, because I come out from it learning so much more.
Right.
And it's that sharing and that gifting of knowledge that it gets passed down generation by generation through your networks that you build, and it's actually things that you do yourself. You know, when you're creating communities and you're sharing the stories of those communities with a community for whom this concept is alien.
Yeah.
And that's really powerful. You know, once upon a time, everyone used to think science, technology, engineering, maths. And then all of a sudden, the new term is science, technology,
Engineering, arts.
engineering, arts, and maths.
Yeah.
But I think that we need to change STEM from STEM to STEAM to something else, and include the word charity into it. So add a C in there. And I haven't worked out what the anagram is yet, because this concept actually only came about yesterday in my head when I was thinking about today.
Yeah.
That actually those five pillars are really important. But actually, when you put them all together,
Yeah.
it's a charity that it's a combination of all of these things that's a charitable gift to people.
Yeah, it's service to others is arguably in places like Hinduism is the singular thing you should be focusing on and should do. But what I liked about your answer earlier is about you immerse yourself in the space and then you find common ground. I think so many people are struggling to even get into the space in a mindset way. It's too complicated. I'm on a D&I committee at work, and a lot of the conversation is, I don't know the language, I don't want to offend somebody. So they don't even get to that first bit to immerse themselves to find common ground. So yeah, I find it really interesting. You talked about young people, and it's a big area that I wanted to touch on with you. Having been friends with you for lots of years now, let's not count because I don't know how many it's been.
You don't have the wrinkles that I do.
Zoom's hiding them well for us. The singular thing, if you ask anybody about who is Sam, and it's that he backs, nurtures, supports young talent. And what that actually means to me is it's not even young talent. It's not these aren't people that are, from my perspective, having seen your journey, that are, have done performing arts at some school and then you're giving them connections and roots. These are people who just have a dream sometimes, or they just have a little bit of a passion, but their surroundings, their environment. I take Bav, for example. For her to be a dancer and a performer, she had to fight against so many of the societal norms that her parents and uncles and aunts were saying, you should do this instead of that. So I know that you back and support people from a very early seed almost of their dream or their hope. And I've seen them go on to be award-winning actors and writers and singers. Tell me where that comes from. That's this deep-rooted value in you to support and open up people's dreams.
Firstly, I'd say I'd like to believe that I nurture all people as opposed to young people, because um, the age at which you discover creativity, and we live in such an ageist world, I think is a really problematic thing.
Yeah.
And given that most South Asians, with the conditioning that we have through generations, you must be a doctor, accountant, lawyer, that the arts has no space for creativity within the space that you're conditioned to be. In terms of individual journeys of people, I think they've made their own mark. I'd like to believe that I am an avenue towards them wanting to become bigger and better or different, or they have their journeys that they go on. And if I'm able to enable someone to do that, well, that's great for me. At that moment of time, I'm thinking, I have to cast this. I need this particular role. I need someone to play it. This person seems to be the most perfect match, and I enable them to do that, to go on that journey. But the reality of why I do this actually goes to communities. When we did a production called Stardust, which was in 2019, pre-pandemic. At the end of the Q&A, we had a 10-year-old boy come with his family, and his parents tell us, thank you so much for making this show, because had you not done this, we would not be able to connect with our child who has this identity, for example, who has just come out to us about it. And what your production has done is show that you can have this identity, you can have this belief, and still retain your Asian values.
Yeah.
And I kid you not, I actually had a tear in my eye at that moment, because at that moment of time, I'm thinking I'm going to get a £10,000 loss making this production.
Yeah.
And that moment just wiped away that pain. It was like, yeah, I'm going to have to get a job to pay this off, but I actually bought that moment is worth more than that £10,000 I lost, because I bought this for someone's life.
Yeah.
And I think each person has that, I guess for you it would have been, I'd like to think that elements of bringing people together to work on something is that they come together and they stay together in life afterwards.
Yep.
And I think I now have 3 successful.
Yeah, you do. I think we were the first. So for context, I met Bav, my wife, in a physical production back in 2004, I want to say. She was the leading lady, and I was a backhand support with Sam running the show. And then, over time we stayed together, and I think we had the first physical child as well. So,
physically you had the child.
Yeah, exactly. So you're bringing people together as well. But I think essentially you create platforms or environments where people can take the opportunity and thrive. And in a similar way, that's what we're doing with Rainbow Boosters. By putting access and opportunity, we're opening people's minds, and what they then do with it is up to them. You have to take that step through those doors that are put there for you as well. So you've definitely enabled so many talented people to realize their dream, and I know all of those that will be listening will definitely be like, yeah, that's me as well. In your own journey, you're very experienced now. You're looked upon as award-winning and experienced to deliver lots of projects. Who opened up those environments for you? Who are the people that gave you the little boost that transformed your career?
I'd say the first thing would be my parents, because they kept saying, no, you cannot go to ballet school. No, you cannot go to your drama class. And I think that fight to want to do it came because of those conversations. Um, I think that there's a wealth of people who I'm very grateful to and absolutely indebted to. I couldn't create opportunities for you if people weren't creating opportunities for me.
Yeah.
If people aren't enabling me, then how can I enable the next generation? That's the way I've always seen it, as a cycle. Um, uh, Key gratitude, obviously, Miss Betty Willoughby, Donna Keller, my drama teacher at school. But then as I grew up, people have walked in and out of my life who have switched different elements in, be it relationships with people, and take a struggling young man who has this vision, and people want to help enable them. I think your dad, for example, is a key person who I'm always forever indebted to, because we couldn't have made that first show without his stamp of him saying, yes, we'll support you, we'll partner with you. Dr. Pushpinda Chaudhary, from the time when I said we want to perform at BAFTA, to I discovered a lady who helped change the way I think about the world, made me question things, made me see things in a different way, and it, I'm now a lot more aware about the gaze that I look at with things. I have a male gaze and then I have a female gaze, and that's only developed because of people like Dr. Chaudhary, who have shared generously experiences and conditioning that women have. That's made me go observe it. When I watch it now in cinema, I'm like, that's bad conditioning.
Right.
And we don't recognize it because it's so accepted in our DNA. And I think that becoming aware of those things, I think they are. I think my partner, I owe incredible gratitude to. My partner knows who they are. They don't. I'm pretty sure they don't want to be named.
I'm really glad you mentioned, because I would get a complaint letter if you hadn't even referenced them on this. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that having a partner who will question and reflect on the work and question post the work, key things are: your job description said this, you cast this, no wonder your show was not very good.
Yeah.
When you have someone who's able to honestly just tell you the things that no one else does, I'm very grateful to that, because I need that blunt. Otherwise, I don't think I pick those signs up, and that's the problem that I have in my own psyche. I need people like my partner, the board at Phizzical, for example, who question things and who will unpick the psychology and unpick the decisions, and create what were the lessons learned from this, to be able to continue to grow. Because none of us were born with the knowledge to do everything. I mean, yes, now you have YouTube, Google, ChatGPT, who give you this information, but does it get absorbed into you until you've had the life skill to experience it? It's like that, that story about, there's no point in telling a child not to touch the fire, because they will want to, and they'll stop doing it the minute they actually touch it and realize this is dangerous. And then they learn. And that's obviously very, very, I'm not saying go take your child to a fire now, just so you know. But it's those things. And I think then there's also a young man who I learned so much from him, and that is my nephew Romeo, because I see the world from his lens, and I see his innocence and his wit develop, and from the moment you realize Santa isn't real from his lens, to the the moment when he's being witty about it, and actually continuing that tradition in his way. I learned so much from it, and so I'm hugely in debt to a range of these people. I probably haven't named everyone. There've been, I guess, that emotional support when needed the most came, I think, from Jazz, Shani, and Bav at a time that was incredibly difficult. And in that moment, I think they became family in my head. I don't think I could take that moment of, oh, I'm sorry, Hitesh. Can't forget Hitesh. I'll be in the bad books.
Well, I know that I asked you that question, and it's probably unfair again because I know your list is long, but your community is tight, and I know that they see you as family as I do. So I want to just tap into some of the stuff we're doing around Rainbow Boosters and education and technology. How has education specifically, because you talked about your different journeys that you had to take when you moved, your education access to things like technology played a role in personal or professional success that you've had?
I think that if I don't come from a particularly well-to-do family, but had my dad not bought me a Atari console when I was, I don't know, 10, 11 years old, and we just wanted to play computer games at that time, and you put the cassette in and it loads the game. You wait for an hour for it to load. Had he not bought that, I wouldn't have learned computing.
Right.
Because the Atari console, you could create programs through code, and I picked up code at that age. And if I did not have access to that, I think a lot of the areas where I'm proud of creativity. Actually, it's come from that sense of technology driving it.
Yeah.
My final year project at university was a touchscreen telephone.
Right.
This was 27 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's the power of education. I think, as a South Asian, our parents who have constantly always believed you need to have a good grounding in education, whether that is the academia, but also education of life.
Yeah.
So that you have the tools, you're equipped with the tools to live your life once they are no more.
Yeah.
Had I not had that, I think my life would be very different. And I think I'm very grateful to my parents for their sacrifices that they've made to enable me to be here. And I think, whilst I don't have children, I try and do it for others' children.
Yeah. You spent a lot of time in India, whether it's sourcing costumes or not sourcing them, building them yourself, making them, seeing shows, and you've traveled a lot, quite a lot around India. So you've seen the divide that happens, whether it's the poverty divide or the digital divide. Why do you think something like Rainbow Boosters is really important for people to get behind? Because you could argue that it's just something that's done for someone somewhere else. But why do you believe that people should be supporting projects and campaigns like this for places like India?
Because the divide in humankind is getting wider and wider and wider. The rich are getting significantly richer. The middle class are getting to being the upper elite class now. The working class are the new middle class. But in India, there is a backward scale as well.
Right.
And if we're not able to enable one of the most creative countries that has incredible conviction to fight, to want to strive to be better, then we're going to miss out on a whole lot of creativity, potential. The next generation of innovators come from those from South Asia, because they've lived those conditions. They've lived. They tackle the real issues, because we in the UK, even our farming now is done in such a way that it's not really farming. I think When I think about India, I'm actually seeing still people with the animals hoeing the land, tilling the land, and that element of technology still isn't there. So there's still, you have to still blood, sweat, and tears over there. And the other part is language. In a country like India, where the working class upwards only now start to speak English and want to speak English or a foreign language, then the below working class communities only speak their mother tongues or the nation tongues. And then we are not growing together as a, there is no, how are we communicating?
Yeah.
And actually, how are we then treating people? We're not treating people with the respect and dignity that they deserve. And I think all of these things are the reason why something like what you're trying to do, the idea of enabling a generation that don't have access to education, access to skills, access to opportunity, we will miss out on what they potentially have to offer.
So finally, on this series, we always try and close out with one positive message or quote that's inspired you through your life and continues to motivate you. Have you got something that you can share with us?
If you don't succeed once, try again. I think that was one of the first quotes that I ever remember hearing. And I think that's something I do wholeheartedly believe in, because I rarely take no for an answer. And sometimes I might go, okay, this no means this isn't meant to be for me. And I accept that. But then there are some of those things where actually this no is something that I need to learn from in order to turn it into a yes. And how can I do that? And that's a craft of making, also, when you're making a script or a show, you striving to make a good piece of work, a good piece of art, a good piece of experience. And if you don't get it right the first time, you need to go back for yourself to go and rework it and rewrite it and then go, yeah, okay, you know what, I'm happy with this. And I mean, the BBC experience recently, I have rewritten words. I mean, I do this even in rehearsal for a normal show as well. I'm rewriting words in the rehearsal, but in that particular moment, I rewrote so much before the first rehearsal. Right. That I think that's definitely a mantra. If you don't succeed once, try again.
Thank you, Sam, so much for taking the time out. I, a little bit selfishly, just wanted to speak to you because I always love speaking to you. And I know that you've got a load on, so thanks for squeezing this in. This series is linked to the Rainbow Boosters project, which is supporting underprivileged children by connecting them to a community in the internet to ensure that they don't get left behind in the digital world. Check out more at rainbowboosters.com, and all the links will be down below. So the next episode will be with you in a few days, but I just want to say thanks, Sam, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you so much for having me and the generosity of your time. Keep doing what you're doing, because you yourself are a bit of inspiration.
Thanks, Sam. Bye.